What's up, everybody? And this is episode 7 of the How to Build a Garage. And my name's Kyle Stumpenhorst, and I welcome you back to the series. We've had a lot of fun so far. We've learned a lot, but now we're going to start changing the actual look of the building by adding some exterior finishes. We got to start, though, with house wrap. Kimberly-Clark Block-It is our house wrap of choice. It's really breathable. It's flexible. You'll see later on why I really like it. But I just want to stress that this is not a vapor barrier. We're not putting this on to block vapor. We are going to do a vapor barrier on the interior, on the heated side. In my climate, we put vapor barrier on the heated side of the insulation. And so I think if you're down south where it's typically a lot hotter, you're going to put it on the outside to stop humidity from coming in. But we're going to keep it from condensing on the outside steel by not moving from the warm inside to the cool outside. So hopefully that makes sense. But I just wanted to kind of stress that because I keep getting those questions on, why we're doing the house wrap. Is it for vapor barrier? Why are we not putting house wrap up in the gables? You'll see that later, and I'll talk about it a little bit. But basically, it's because we just don't want wind to shoot through the walls into the conditioned space. So the attic, it's not as big of a deal. Yeah, Kimberly-Clark house wrap, we love it. It's stretchable, it's pliable. We can really make it look nice, and by having that sweet co-branded RR Buildings logo, it's going to look good at least for the couple days that it's viewable before we put our side steel on it. Once the framing is done, we move on to house wraps. We've got all of our windows, doors framed, and yes, I get the question, do you tape your house wrap? Yeah, we're going to tape it right here. Sometimes you don't see it because it's underneath of a trim, but how about that? Custom Block-It house wrap. Tyvek is good, no doubt, but it does not lay nearly as well and is not as forgiving on a post frame as Block-It is. I'm not really sure how to describe it. It's somewhat flexible. I'm sure I could read a product sheet on this, but you can stretch it, and that's what I love about it, because I love to get a nice crisp wall. Even though it's going to get covered up, it still is nice. And this is mainly, we're not using this for vapor barrier, okay? So I get that question a lot too. This is strictly used, we want to cut down any wind infiltration into the building. Now, one thing to notice is you see all those creases and wrinkles in that house wrap. We always staple the top, pull down the middle, and then work it one way to the other, and boom, perfectly flat. Another thing is we like to run the small piece of house wrap at the bottom and then run our full sheet, or at least as much as we can. These are 10 by 100 rolls. We like to run those from the top down, and we do that because it's easier to stretch down, and it's easier to have a tape joint at eye level, workable level, that you don't have to be climbing around and running tape, because it's just easier. Once house wrap's on, we're going to start with a base trim, and probably the trickiest part is the corner of the base trim, so I'll show you that. Okay, so when making this bend around, first thing you're going to do is you're going to put a straight line up right on the edge of your framing, and then you're going to measure over twice the thickness of this bend right here. Just barely under 1 inch. So I just use my speed square since we've already got measurements on here. We're going to square those measurements up as well. And we're going to take the middle one, square it out. And we'll go ahead and square it down. Now comes the snips. Whenever you're going around to your left this way, you're going to use greens. So we're going to cut right down those 2 lines. I take that back, 3 lines. You're going to bend these over. You're going to make a cut from here right to the middle mark. So that's going to be a 45-degree angle, and it's important that you use greens because the greens push the metal down and leave this side up so that when it closes the miter, it'll go over top effortlessly. And we're going to come in from the back side. We're just going to cut those 2 tabs off. Okay, cut the two tabs off. Now you're going to come in and cut right just barely past this middle line that you made towards the front. Now the fun part, on the back side underneath, you just have to make a couple little triangles, not straight 45s, but this line you're just trying to connect. This is what will determine where your bend is. And if done properly, did it meet to your standards, Greg?
Not bad.
Not bad. A lot of stuff to note here in this little video segment is we get our base trim all ran. That's off of a snap line 4 inches up from the bottom of grade board. That's our goal for the bottom of our base trim, and that is so it matches our doors and it matches the interior concrete finished floor height. Then we're going to start doing the layout. This 30-foot wide building is going to be a perfect 10 sheets because the steel is all 3-foot coverage, and then the side wall is going to be a little bit different because it's 40 foot. We have to shift the sheet just a little bit so that it is equal on both ends, but you'll notice that we do lay a tape measure out and mark every sheet location, and then Greg's coming behind it and leveling that location down, and that is to assure that our sheets end up in the exact location for consistency's sake on our windows and doors especially. When running our steel, we always punch our steel so that we can get straight consistent screw lines. So this is what I'm doing right here. I'm making sure that the edges are all in line before I do that. We always like to mark 1.25 inches from the end, and that's on the both top and bottom of our wainscot. And we always also make the mark just about a 1/2 inch away from the rib. And there's no right or wrong reason. I don't think that anybody has to do it a certain way, but this is how we do it. We like it. It's nice and clean, and it also keeps those ribs pressed tight to the wall. And I just use this is an AWL and all, and super cheap. They do not last forever. They will bend, but usually this is 14 sheets. A couple hits will get it through enough so that you can mark where your location is. I always try to leave one of these punches in because it helps it from moving around on you. Now, a lot of guys will say, why don't you just drill your steel? We don't want those drill shavings all over our tile. And drills will, as you go to screw, inevitably they will walk on you and they will move instead of go straight down. By punching, you're only going down about 10 sheets at a time. So you can constantly, check and make sure that you're always going down in the right spot. All right, that's ready. So whenever we run steel, you can see we got a mark here that we've already laid out our 3-foot profile to. We're going to make sure our leg hits that. We'll screw that. And then we've also got one up at the top. We'll make sure we hit that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come over here and we're going to make a good rib, which means basically we're just going to make it fit over it nice and tight. Running wainscot is pretty much one of the most easily satisfying instant gratification things. I mean, once you've got your layouts marked and your steel punched, you're just, it's so easy. Line up your edges, make a good rib, make sure that the laps are good, and screw it. It's really not rocket science, but one thing I did want to mention is before you screw any wall steel, before you install your windows, you always need to double check, make sure that your walls are plumb, because once you get into putting on steel on the building, that's when the diaphragm starts getting stronger and it gets harder to maneuver and persuade the materials to go where you want them. So don't ever just assume things are where you want them until you've double checked, triple checked, because once the steel's on, it's kind of that's where it's going to be. So you can see this is sheet number 13 on the pile. So I punched through all these sheets with that punch, and that's what I'm getting on sheet number 13. I still know exactly where I'm going. Yes, I'm not punched through, but it's easy to make sure that your screws stay perfect in a line. Now once I get all the panels kind of placed where I want them, and I got to come back in and fill all those screw holes, the Makita 2500 RPM screw gun, it's a clutch driver kind of like a drywall gun, but it's only 2500 RPM, so it doesn't go as fast, and it's made specifically for this sort of a screw, whether it be a tech screw or a metal to wood screw like we're using. But it does a really good job at putting them in at a perfect depth every time. It's almost impossible to overdrive them. But it doesn't have that fine control that I like that the Milwaukee Surge gives me to just place the sheets where I want them and then come back with the Makita. But the Makita, you can't beat it. It's super fast, super efficient. Once we get our wainscot on, we get to the most important trim on the building. This is the one that I think needs the most special attention. It's the double angle trim that goes over top of our wainscot, and the reason it's so important to me is because that line is the one line that almost everybody can see. They walk up to the building, they bend over, and they can look down that line, and that's where they're going to see imperfections. They're going to see if your wall is not flat. They're going to see if your trims are not straight. So this is the most important line, and we really take a lot of time to make sure it's perfectly straight. Once we snap our line and run our base trim out, we always like to eyeball it, see if there's any ups and downs, which I'm pretty much happy with this. And you can see here on this detail, we always just cut a quick notch out because there is a hem back here. And so instead of lapping a hem, what we do is we notch this guy, and then we open up the next one. I'll show you. We open up the next one, and it just wraps right around it, right to where the cut was. So that's a little bit of silicone that we put in this joint, so any water is not gonna make it back behind here and wick in. It's just gonna run over the edge. So, contracting, it's full of problems, mistakes, delays. This is job number 2 where our windows were not proper. What happened this time around? This time around, the windows were delivered on a pallet. They were left wrapped, saran wrapped, laying flat, which is a huge no-no. So when we showed up to the job site, they were warped. The heat got to them, the saran wrap caused like a greenhouse effect and warped the windows pretty bad. So that's the one downside to a vinyl window. I gotta wait till next Friday. So today's Tuesday. If they don't get ordered by a Friday, I don't see them till the next Friday. So I missed last Friday's cutoff, which means now next Friday, I've gotta tear off the steel around these windows, just like we did on our last job, which I don't know if I even put it up on the YouTube, but same sort of thing. Had to come back because they were ordered improperly. Now I'm gonna have to run the steel through these windows, come back, pull the sheets off around the window, install the window, and then I'll be able to keep going. So not the end of the world, but still huge pain in the butt. That's called life. There's issues all around. Sometimes you just gotta be able to roll with them. You did good work, Greg. Nice. Hopefully this video had some good information that you guys are going to be able to use. Short of making this twice as long and going right into the sidewall steel, I'm going to do that in the next video, so definitely stay tuned. Hit that subscribe button if you want to follow along. Feel free to give me a thumbs up or a comment if you've got some feedback. I'd love to hear it. But until next time, thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you soon.